Hi everyone, I'm excited to share my advanced flourishing journey with you all called as the Eidolon Archives. So let's get started with my journey design. So this year-long journey design actually includes a web-based visual novel as the primary deliverable, following the credit outcomes from flourishing's philosophical and existential inquiry. So, like, what happens when truth starts to change shape and the similar worlds just don't seem the same to everybody? That is the main premise of the story that I have been working on. But before the journey design actually reached at this stage, the main idea first took shape through brainstorming. And the initial ideation actually began by narrowing down to three main themes from philosophy. And this was useful for credit mapping as well as the specifics of the outcome guided the research process. Next came the story ideation, which led to the implementation of the learned concepts as well, which is why I finalized for this to be a web-based visual novel story. My next step involved research and analysis, and this was the board I was working on, involving notes categorized through each topic such as consciousness, reality tunnels, and Eastern and Western philosophical ideas. This actually being the process to understand the themes of philosophy and existentialism, there were still a lot of things that I was unsure about. So, hence began my next part of the research, where I was actually looking into other works by authors such as Kafka and Dostoevsky to see how they depict existential crisis and moral dilemmas. Soon after, I also started my search for different game engines to see which one would fit my list for optimization, accessibility, and ease of use. And lastly, I stored all of my UI design references for game screens and visual novels to collect inspiration for my own. And after everything was set and clear, my next step was to begin the actual creation of the story, which looked to designing the visuals and connecting the functions in the game engine. But to elaborate on this a little bit more, such as the story design. So the story actually involves such as like the title itself, the Eidolon Archives, which basically translates into a phantom or a specter or even like an idolized being. And I chose this as the title because I think that the statue is something similar, with no known history but a myth-like origin. And the plot also revolves around a team of researchers who find the same statue with inscriptions in the same place where the previous team went missing. Now, from an existential aspect, the inscriptions being interpreted differently just leads to more confusion about the actual truth. And with determinism, the free will of choice fades as whatever the inscription says, the next thing that is bound to happen. And all of these details seem quite absurd, intentionally, where it is there to present the slow spiral into madness and the ongoing search for truth despite the actual absurd. Now, as for writing and designing the story, this was the workspace that I was working on to write the journal like entries represented through different sticky notes, with the yellow ones pointing to the scenes containing an illustration. And this was the progression in terms of UI design and character design as well as palette design. And these were the G developed event sheets that I was working on, where its functioning language was a little bit of a learning curve, but later turned out to be really helpful to create customized functions. And now for the big reveal, the final product. So I'm currently overseeing its export and fixing any bugs as well, where one challenge I'm trying to solve is the previous screen button, which isn't triggering the dialog tree to rerun once you actually visit the previous screen once again. And I think this button is very important so that the user can avoid visiting the home screen to redo the story all over again. Now, as this story comes to an end, so does my journey, and as I reflect on it, there were many challenges along the way. I remember how writing the story was a little bit difficult, and creating it through GDevelop was also another learning curve, but on the bright side, there were also new skills and learnings that I learned, like working effectively with GDevelop and creating customized screen buttons, and gaining a deeper understanding of existential themes and dilemmas, which concludes my journey and brings me to the end. So, thank you so much for listening to me.